All right, we are here with Weebo Jones. Are you on Twitter and all that?
Yeah, I am. Weebo Jones, at Weebo Jones.
But yeah, your name comes from Flubber, like the little robot?
The little robot from the movie Flubber, her name was Weebo, and she was about the sassiest character that I can remember growing up with, which is why I picked her name when I kind of adopted a persona for online. And then the Jones part is just, everyday, whatever. Jones is like the cooler version of Smith.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Or like Jackson, but I mean,
Exactly.
Michael kind of threw that one off. We're on a first name basis.
No.
And watching your videos, you are actually pretty sassy sometimes, I've got to say. Especially when you had Tide, like just sipping Tide there. But like I said, you should use Fabuloso next time, or Fabulosa.
Yeah, see, I didn't have very much in terms of laundry detergents. I took inspiration from Chris Reagan's popular drink bleach, go kill yourself or I'll go kill myself type of jokes, just because I wanted to be that edgy when I was a kid, and we would play Mario Kart.
You got like that with Mario Kart?
Oh yeah, especially when we did balloon battles on the GameCube. Oh, I'm so old-fashioned.
You don't mess around. All right, well.
No.
Good to know.
I was all there.
Yeah, and you're if I'm not mistaken, you're also a gun advocate, right?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Actually, what I asked for my birthday this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it like an AR or like a handgun? Like what are we talking here?
I really like shooting with a rifle, but I also do want to do the whole concealed carry type thing, which I can't do till I'm 21, which I'm a little young for. But in preparation for that, I'd like to have several, just because, you can never have too many.
So let's I guess begin here.
Okay.
So you made a video about an article by none other than the one name Evan about colorblind racism. Now, what is that exactly?
So the way that I interpreted it in my video when I covered it, colorblind racism was basically the biggest oxymoron I've ever come across, because colorblindness, as we all know, is the absence of prejudice because of skin color, and racism is the complete opposite of that, prejudice because of skin color. So they didn't really mesh well together for me, which is kind of why I decided to make the video, because it sounded so completely ridiculous that I just could not let it go. And I also wanted to branch out from the taking on the feminists, with the hashtag everything is sexist series. So that was a good segue, I guess. How much evidence do you want from us? Like, what will prove that people are not racists? And it's gotten to a point where even if you are colorblind completely, you can still be considered a racist, apparently, based on that article, which is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah. So given these critiques that state those who host these ideas are purveyors of colorblind racism, have you been able to find any substantiated examples of how this is the case?
So, like, examples of actual colorblind racism?
Yeah, like how is that in action? Like saying, okay, you can be black, you can be brown, you can be yellow, whatever, but as long as you assimilate culturally, you're basically the same as everybody else. And then to have that is colorblind racism.
I don't think I cannot recall an instance where I have come across some instance where colorblind racism does, present itself in a way that would be, unquestionable without a certain amount of mental gymnastics. I don't know. The closest I can get to actually unintentional racism would have to be things like that have to do with positive discrimination almost. Mm-hmm. So like affirmative action, the assumption that certain races and certain genders can't, do some things or get into certain colleges or workplaces or whatever based on the assumption that it's because of who they are as a person as opposed to their merits, you know, which is just absolutely ridiculous to me.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Am I just saying things here, or does this sound like it's only applicable to white people?
In certain areas, sure. I suppose it can be applicable. But again, that depends on the instance and the certain nuances that go with each instance. I mean, it could just as easily be argued that it could be the same for someone of the opposite skin color, right? I mean, any scenario can be argued that that is the case. It just can be anyone put in any scenario. But I can't adhere to the concept, even the concept of colorblind racism at all whatsoever, because to have colorblind racism, you'd have to have two opposing forces working against each other in a way that just doesn't sit well with me, or just in general with the English language. Just it doesn't work logically. It does not equate, and I cannot reconcile that as a person, as someone who prides themselves on being logical most of the time, and as someone who can speak English and read. I can't reconcile that at all. I mean, because consider this. When you're applying for college, right? There's a whole bunch of different requirements and different criteria that you kind of got to go through in order to do this, to make yourself stand out to the administration, right? So there's your GPA, there's your SAT or ACT score, depending on where you are in the US. There's your curricular activities, right? So if you're in a sport, or if you're in a club, or if you're in a whatever, there's your volunteer hours too. Some people forget that. There's your essays, there's your, I don't know, if your parents were in college too, I'm assuming they take that into consideration. And then let's say that there are two different applicants that apply for the same college, and it comes down to both of them, and like all of the other spots are filled, and you got one left, and it's between these two applicants. They have the exact same everything, which hypothetically, because it's impossible to actually have that, but it comes down to one or the other, and the only difference between those two people is their race. If you pick one over the other, it can be argued that either one is racist, right? But I cannot mentally figure how one could argue that it's about race in an impossible situation like that. I mean, at some point you'd have to like flip a coin because they're so similar, right? So it comes down to intent, right? Just if you're in that impossible decision, if you pick one over the other because of certain whatever, then yeah, sure, that's racist. But if you flip a coin, or if you're just picking at random because it's an impossible decision, then that takes away from the whole intent aspect, which means that it's no longer racist. And that's the whole thing that racism boils down to. It's intent to be racist. It's malicious intent, I would assume, because that's what everyone attributes it to. Racism is always this bad thing, right? Racism is horrible. No one wants to be racist, because racism stems from the intent to be an asshole to people of a different color. Well, that's the thing about generational differences, is that with every generation, the next generation tends to be the exact opposite of the generation before them, in like not the most extreme way, but in a somewhat extremer way. It's true pretty much across the board, I would assume. I don't have the actual statistics on me, but
that's how they get you.
Yeah. It's just the whole rebellious phase. Each generation doesn't want to be exactly like its parents. And it can also be seen in the way that we elect certain officials in the US. I mean, we constantly go from Democrat to Republican to Democrat to Republican, right? Because of the way the previous administration was ordered. or the previous administration did what they did. I mean, we keep going in this cycle of, oh, well, the Democrats sucked last not quarter, but the last 8 years. So let's vote Republican. And then Republicans sucked last 8 years. Let's vote Democrat. And it just goes in a cycle, which is why, we switch off pretty much evenly.
Yeah. So this is something I've had a lot of problems with understanding, but maybe you can help me out here because you said you're a psych major, so maybe you know the psychology behind this. When it comes to interracial and LGBTQRST, WRX plus pedophiles exposure for children, it's meant to desensitize them to the idea and then normalize it through the desensitization process. So how does that suddenly change when it comes to exposure to racism? What's the rationale behind that?
Also, for all of those, excluding the whole pedophilia thing, which is just there's a small group of people, I'm going to mention this, there's a small group of people who are trying to normalize it, and it's just boggling my mind because they will not go away, and they are everywhere on YouTube, apparently. Mm-hmm. And I've heard so many YouTubers talk about them, and it's just ridiculous, and I even addressed them in a video called Abuse Apologetics, and they did not go away for months. Constantly in my comment section, just bickering. But with the exception of that, I can understand trying to normalize a certain lifestyle, like LGBTQ, RS, all of that, because we do want to be inclusive to like certain people's sexualities, so long as they're not hurting anybody, right? It's totally all right, whatever. But with the exclusion of pedophilia, of course. But with racism is actually, it's typically malicious, right? It's done out of malicious intent. It's a prejudice against another person because you think that, you're better than them based on your skin color or what have you. And the reason we don't want to expose children to that is because children are, my dad uses this expression a lot, but children are like sponges. So they absorb a lot of information very quickly. They're developing, so they are taking everything in all the time, no matter what, which is why you don't want to swear in front of children either. Otherwise, you're going to have little toddlers running around saying the F word all the time. Just, it's no bueno. But, so they're like sponges. And it kind of goes to the whole, you remember, did you ever take a psych class? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there was that one study done by, I believe it was Albert Bandura, the Bobo clown doll experiment, the one with the blow up clown doll. Where
I just know Bobo and Yum Yum the clown.
Okay, well, a brief refresher course for you. Albert Bandura basically did what he did was he put a guy in a room, an adult person in a room with a clown doll, and a child would be at a window watching the adult. And the adult would basically wail on this clown doll and just like go to town violently. Just, I guess. It was just very violent. And the kid would be watching. And then the kid would go in and he would, I guess, beat up on the doll as well because that's what he saw. And this is kind of the principle that we're working with here. Children see, they mimic, and they see and they mimic. So I remember watching an interview with, I forgot what the guy's name was, but he was interviewing Westboro Baptist Church, right? And he went and he interviewed one of the little kids that the Phelps family had brought along that usually was along to protest and whatever. And he was like, yay tall, maybe 7, maybe 6, like super young, not young enough or not old enough to understand any of what he was saying. But he was saying, or he was holding up a sign protesting a soldier's funeral saying God hates fags and basically soldiers are fags or whatever, right? And it was horrible, absolutely abhorrent. Like, oh my God, this little kid is saying this. How could he be saying this? Well, it's because he's grown up in this environment where these people are absolutely just abhorrent in terms of what they think about everyone. just this cult-like mentality. So they've grown up in this environment that they tend to emulate when they can, or when they need to, or when their adult peoples in their life tell them that it's okay to do this, because that's all they know. And that's why we don't want to teach kids or let kids know about racism. It's because we don't want them to emulate this kind of rhetoric, and we don't want them to grow up learning this. But we also have to give children credit, because while, you know, they are very sponge-like and they do emulate a lot of what they see and a lot of what people do around them, they also go through that rebellious stage, as we were talking about earlier, where children, the generation afterwards, they kind of rebel against their parents. Well, they go through that rebellious phase afterwards, and they grow up. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes they grow up and they basically, what they do is they find their own path, they do their own thing, they rage against their parents and rebel against whatever ideals they have. So say their parents are Democrat, maybe they'll be a Republican. Maybe say their parents are Republican, maybe they'll be more Democratic. It depends on, again, the upbringing and the way that the child is going about their life and becoming independent, their own person. But typically you go through this cycle of figuring out who you are, and that's the beauty of psychology. Actually, that's why I'm studying it, because I like to know how people become the people that they are and what makes them tick and what they're thinking and why they think it. And there's so many different factors that contribute to what makes a person become what a person is and find their identity. So like, there's the biological, there's the evolutionary, there's the social, there's the everything, nature versus nurture, right? So everything goes into making this one compact person. And while you don't want children to emulate this at an early age, because it can affect them later on in life, you also have to give them enough credit. So there's like a little gray area there where you can expose them to a little bit of it, but not so much that it's to the point where it's damaging to their psyche that early. Especially since not all people can logically think their way out of, well, this doesn't sound right, and well, this is ridiculous. Why would I want to think this when I can think this? Or this doesn't make any sense. Or this is horrible to be this horrible to another human. Why shouldn't I do this? It is a combination of internal figuring out your identity, but it's also a combination with what it is that you see and what it is that you've been brought up with. So it's a really long-winded explanation. I'm sorry.
No. That's it's great. Because I hadn't really thought about it that way, because I was always thinking, you know, if you want to desensitize a child to what you see as, I guess, abnormal behaviors or abnormal sights that they, you know, won't be exposed to in the mainstream, then like, why not do it with racism too? Then they'll be like, oh, well, some people are racist, they're kind of shitty, whatever. Like, but they won't, you know, cry about it or freak out, or like that chick in the yellow jacket when Trump was getting inaugurated, you know, just screaming at the sky while people laugh. Like, you won't have that, and then like you won't have to say that's not my daughter or something.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought she looked like Psyduck from Pokemon. I'm surprised nobody ever made that comment.
Oh my god, you're right. Now I see it.
Yeah, you will never be able to unsee that. And another thing, but I forgot to bring up, but in that article that you were reading, the author supposes or makes a bunch of suppositions, like unsubstantiated claims and assertions. And one thing that I always want to ask is, like, where do they get the idea that everyone wants to touch Black people's hair? Like, I have never seen a white person or a Mexican person or anybody go, like, without saying anything, just like, I just want proof of that happening one time.
See, here's the thing. I can argue it from the other side, because I get people that want to touch my hair all the time, ever since I was a little girl, because it's, believe it or not, it's super soft. And it's super long too, so people want to touch it, they want to braid it, so it's whatever, so I just let them. And then I also have another friend that always is getting her hair touched, because it's actually a lot different from mine. Mine's straight and soft and silky and whatever. Hers is like super curly and bunchy. She's white, by the way, but she's super curly, and it's like super thick, but it's like so fun to play with. And I think that's kind of what it is. It's sometimes Black people's hair can be super fun to play with, but it's not, you know, singularly a Black person thing, because I have so much experience with that, and it's not just me, it's other white people too.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, have you ever heard of the Mars Volta?
No.
Well, they're a band. Their original band was at the Drive-In. They're from here. It's a bunch of Hispanic dudes and like one Black dude. But the Black dude keeps his hair really short, and the two main guys, like the guitarist Omar and the singer Cedric, they both have fros. Like one of them's pale and blue-eyed, and the other's like clearly Puerto Rican. And they both have these huge fros, and it's like, you guys think we don't have that like in our ethnicity? Like what? Just I guess it's just ignorance of like biology or something, because to think that they're singularly the only people with hair like that is kind of, it's mind-boggling to me. It's like just go 2 blocks any direction in most cities, and like you're gonna see somebody else.
Exactly. And the hair argument particularly, it just boggles my mind, because my mother was a hairstylist. So I grew up seeing a whole bunch of different hair types and, you know, touching a whole bunch of different hair types, and just, you know, I experienced a lot of that. So it was just like, what?
I don't know why, but I just imagined you just smaller and like in the corner, just like when it, you know, when they sweep it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No. She used to give me a pair of scissors and a dummy head doll, and I just used to cut hair.
Yeah. Just give them all bowl cuts.
Like, yeah, basically.
Yeah, if you do that, then like you make bowl cuts cool again. So anyway, thank you for including Little Black Hitler in that. Like, I don't see enough of that guy. He's amazing. Oh God. So I just can't get his face out of my head where he's like, Aquella, y'all. And you're like, whoa, dude, what is that? And he's like, you know, explaining why he hates white people, and like a big smile on his face the whole time. He looks like Chris Tucker, like if Chris Tucker just lost his goddamn mind. Anyway, moving on.
Special person.